Welcome to Northlandia, a place to bring your curiosity because here you'll find curiosities. I'm Wyatt Buckner of the Duluth News Tribune, and I will be your guide as we discover the unique and fascinating stories here in the Northland. Here we celebrate the region's distinctive people, places, and history. In this episode, we look into why a Lake Vermilion town has the world's first monument to President McKinley. Let's venture forth into Northlandia. To tell us about this tower monument, I'm joined again by reporter Jimmy Lovrien. Jimmy, thanks for joining us again, now on episode 28 of Northlandia.
Thank you, Wyatt. It is good to be here.
All right, Jimmy, how'd you find this one?
Yeah.
We're just going to jump right into it.
So I had a few fall through, and so I was kind of going back to, there are some websites, so I had a few ideas for Northlandia as kind of fall through, and there are some websites that list different plaques, informational plaques or whatever at the side of the road or monuments and stuff like that. And so I think I had come across that for that memorial I did for the first concrete street in Duluth.
The Grantoid
Memorial
Park.
That's on there, and so I was kind of like, maybe I'll find something kind of like that maybe people don't really know about. And so I was on that, and then I came across a similar website called roadsideamerica.com, which is kind of, like a Wikipedia of odd roadside attractions, things to stop at, things to see, whatever, beside the road. And this was called the world's first memorial to slain McKinley. And so that piqued my interest, and maybe readers will share an interest in wondering why Tower has that. I don't know, but it piqued my interest, and that's still there. So why, after 112 years, does this, obelisk to McKinley stand, and why is it there in the first place?
Mm-hmm. So, Jimmy, when you drive in the Tower, Minnesota, up near Ely, the Lake Vermilion area, there's, as you describe, an 18-foot obelisk beside the highway. So what is that about? Like, obviously we now know what this is for, but why is it an 18-foot tall obelisk?
That is the memorial for our dearly departed President William McKinley, and it is there as you drive. If you're driving east on 169 there, you get to Benchwarmers, and kind of almost in the front, Benchwarmers Bar and Grill. It's almost like in the front yard of that, off to the side maybe a little bit, is that obelisk, and then right behind the obelisk and Benchwarmers is then there's a locomotive on display there, and the Historical Society has some different things there. So that's where it is now, and it is made out of steel and iron and kind of, because it's right. I mean, the Iron Range, the Vermilion Range, Sudan, which is right next to Tower, had that underground mine. And so it was kind of built to, not only honor the McKinley, but also integrating parts of the mining history of the towns that raised money to put it up. And so, made out of steel. And then the original base was made out of iron ore chunks. It just looks like rock, but I guess it's iron ore chunks. And so it used to be actually on the east side of town. And when it was moved across town, they had a parade. I don't know when it was, but the archivist at the Tower Sudan Historical Society said that there was a parade across town, and school children carried rocks from the base, to the new location. So assuming that is still the same rock, same ore used there to build the base, it's so symbolic of the mining history, but was placed there within 2 months of McKinley dying in 1901.
Mm-hmm. And I feel obligated to ask for listeners maybe aren't super fresh in their American history. I know I have to think twice when some presidents' names are listed, but maybe just brief summary, who exactly is President McKinley and where are they in the presidential lineage, and why the significance of him in this regard?
Right. So President William McKinley was in his second term when he was shot on September 6th and seemed to be faring well. He was recovering, and then took a turn for the worse and died September 14th of 1901. Like I said, he was in his second term. He's originally from Canton, Ohio, and Teddy Roosevelt was his vice president, who then became president after that. And he was a Republican, very, well liked. Even, there were when they had this memorial dedicated, they had, Democrats from the region speak highly of him. So a well liked president, and I think the way the country kind of as a country entirely mourn together. I came across a newspaper article that in Biwabik, they had a townwide memorial service shortly after his death, and all the businesses in the mine closed at noon that day, and then were closed for the rest of the day, and to kind of allow everyone to collectively grieve. So there was a big, I think anytime someone like that has died, especially a long time ago, there was always like a collective countrywide, grieving process. And so for the people of Tower in Sudan, it was let's build a monument for them. And so that's kind of how this came to be.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to imagine what that kind of response would be like, because we never experienced that kind of like significant level of like a presidential death,
exactly,
of intentional murder of that regard. In our lifetime.
Right. I mean, it's been almost 60 years now since Kennedy was assassinated, and then obviously things were renamed for him very quickly. And there was, we look at some of our archives here. There were churches in Duluth were immediately, having little ceremonies for him. Catholic. He's Catholic, and so that was big. But also, non-Catholic churches were doing things in that day or the next day. So there was a big collective kind of a remembrance of him. But that was already 60 years ago. So it's you're right. It's kind of, I don't know how to imagine and what that would be like today. What kind of collective processing a country would go through after that. I suppose we have certain things that tragedies that have happened that people respond to similarly, but for an individual, I don't know, it's kind of weird to think about.
Mm-hmm. And what day was he shot again?
September 6th, 1901. And then
6th, okay.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the 112th anniversary. Well, when this plays, it'll be after.
Right, but recording on the 5th right now of September, so literally a day before that anniversary. Yeah. Is that intentional in terms of the timing of the story, or just happened to work out that way? It just happened
to work out that way.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we've established who McKinley is for those who maybe don't remember as much school history when it comes to that. Why is the world's first memorial to President McKinley in Tower?
Yeah.
Out of all places in the United States, all mourning the loss of the president, why Tower?
I think that's a question everyone has. And so I talked to Richard Hansen. He is the archivist at Tower Sudan Historical Society. And he said that he kind of laughed when I called him, and he's like, it's funny because I've had so many questions this week about it. It's just crazy. Usually nobody says much, but the people that do say something usually end up like kind of taking a photo in front of it and then asking, and kind of after the fact, like, why Tower? What? Why Tower? And his answer is there was a higher up at the mine in Sudan, the company that owned the mine at the time, who was acquainted somehow with McKinley, who took it upon himself to rally the business community and the people of Tower in Sudan to raise money for a memorial. They raised $1,000 from Tower and Sudan residents within 2 weeks, and then they commissioned the National Iron Company in Duluth to cast the memorial. And then it was ready soon after, and on November 10th, 1901, so within 2 months, is when the big service parade, followed by speakers in Tower to dedicate the memorial, was held. And that attracted the governor, who telegraphed the widow of President McKinley to kind of say, hey, we've got the country's first memorial to your husband. Telegraph is short, but he kind of let her know that was happening, and then spoke at this event. It attracted like 5,000 people, which is big considering the size of Tower in Sudan. They had special trains running from Ely and from the Masaba Range cities to bring people in. And then it was like half the people there apparently participated in the parade that preceded this, and then speakers at the memorial. So that's how it happened. There's kind of a still, it's still kind of a far connection, for Tower to take that up, but that's how they did it. And so I guess there's a little bit of over in Canton, Ohio, McKinley's hometown, they kind of claim maybe sometimes they've got the first one, but I guess you can consider his headstone, his burial place as being a memorial. That would have that would have been ahead of this. However,
it's a technicality.
Exactly. The memorial that's there, which is kind of what you would it's kind of what you would see like in Washington, D.C., kind of that it's not gigantic, but it's pretty big, and it's up on a hill and everything. That took a few years to build. So the memorial that's there now is a few years old or a few years younger than what the people of Tower and Sedan put up. So yeah, in all of our coverage at the time, both the Duluth News Tribune and the Herald, which were both owned, this kind of the same operation, morning, afternoon papers. Anyway, they both were saying this was the United States' first memorial to McKinley at the time, and that's kind of held. And then I think it's safe to assume, at least for the roadside America website, took it further and said, it's the world's first. I mean, I think that's safe to assume. U.S. If it's the U.S.'s first for a slain president, then I think it's safe to assume it's the world's. Unless someone out here is aware of an overseas memorial for McKinley that was, dedicated before November 10th, 1901.
Mm-hmm. Did they claim that was the first pretty much right away?
Yeah. Yep. It was the U.S. first right away. That was the governor told McKinley's widow. And in the coverage leading up to it, they were always like, "Oh, we're gonna be the first." That was a real point of pride. And
but why
the lead up?
Just bragging rights?
I don't know. That's a good question. And we were kind of talking about the collective grieving or whatever, and other cities wanted to follow suit. And I'm not aware of any that have, at least in our region. I mean, this had inspired Ely apparently to take up, try to raise money for a McKinley memorial. There were other cities that were kind of putting committees together and maybe starting to pull money together and seeing what's possible. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for doing so. But I'm not aware of any other McKinley memorials in our region. Again, if anyone's listening and is aware of one, let me know. But I think this is the only one, and it was the first. So, yeah, I think they were. I mean, I don't know. Small towns, even towns the size of Duluth, get proud about, what they have that other people don't.
What do you mean? We don't ever get proud about things like having unique lift bridges or big lakes or anything like that.
Exactly.
So just to maybe clarify for those who maybe want, because this was brought up briefly in our Northlandia meeting and that we were talking about your story. There's no relation at all with the town of McKinley, which is relatively nearby, right?
Yes. So McKinley is an Iron Range city, and it is not named after President William McKinley. It was named after the McKinley brothers, who leased a lot of land around what would become McKinley, and then they apparently, a decade before McKinley was assassinated, the president was assassinated, in 1891, they discovered ore that would become the McKinley mine. And so, it's named after them and was named before the president. Now, there is a McKinley campground in Tower on Lake Vermilion that is named after the president. So one of the higher-ups at the mine, shortly after this memorial was dedicated, also established McKinley Park, which is, you can camp there now. So that's still there. It's not near the memorial, but there is one more thing named after the president in Tower, Minnesota. But yes, McKinley, Minnesota, not after President McKinley.
Sorry to disappoint our listeners in McKinley.
Right.
So how exactly do they know that this is indeed the first actual memorial to McKinley? And I would even go start to say, how they even know back then? I mean, it's not like we had Google back then. You just easily, we're the first one. Is it just like, they just, there's no way someone did it better than us or faster than us?
I think that's kind of how they did it. They kind of were like, looking around, I mean, in the papers, I suppose wire services from across the country, I suppose they were reliant on. There was no word of another McKinley memorial at that point, and so they kind of took the title and ran with it. Today, there is Google, and there seems to be no other big memorial claiming to be the first. So, yeah, I think it's probably safe to say. I mean, again, what is a memorial? I mean, there's probably, I don't know. When we think about things today, sometimes people put out flowers and stuff, maybe like a temporary memorial when a tragedy happens. Did that happen at the time outside the White House, or did someone do that outside of his? I don't know, like his hometown somewhere, or I don't know, I feel like
then you're getting into the argument of a definition argument.
Exactly.
What makes it a memorial?
Right, exactly. Like that's probably more temporary, So yeah, I think they're probably safe with this assumption. I mean, at the time they put their foot down and said, yeah, we're the first, and it's kind of stuck.
Yeah, and now, well over 100 years later, how is the memorial used or honored today?
Yeah, so like I said, it moved across town at some point. It had been placed on the east side of town, kind of where the highway goes over the river there, And there was the Vermilion Hotel was there. It has since burned down, but that's where it was placed next to that. At some point, it was moved across town, to where Benchwarmers is now, and the locomotive on display. Kids carried the base of the rock by rock over. Anyway, since then, it's kind of been a place for people to take pictures by and wonder why it's there.
Good rhyme in there.
Right, yeah. And then there's other historical society kind of stuff. So, it's kind of grouped in with the locomotive and other things that the Historical Society has, which are kind of, going to, I guess, attract the same kind of audience of curious people, appreciate history, and kind of want to know more about other things. And so it's kind of in that group. And so, yeah, it's, but I'm unaware of any services that have been there in recent memory, to honor McKinley. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but it hasn't been for a very, very long time in Tower, if it has.
Mm-hmm. And with all of this, what would you say for you was the most fascinating or interesting aspect of this entire story?
Just that it's there. I had no idea. I've driven past it and I don't even know if I saw it there. If I did, I don't know if I know it was for this, I guess. Yeah, just that it's there and that there is a story behind it. It's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of an oddity. Like, again, everyone wonders why Tower. Yeah, I guess just its existence and why is what piqued my interest.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm like you, where I've driven through Tower several times, and so I have to actively think about remembering seeing that, but I do kind of vaguely remember like seeing it in the corner of my eye. And
right.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of interesting. Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah. So I guess I'll notice it next time I go by instead of just seeing, Benchwarmers, the locomotive,
Mm-hmm.
There's an obelisk there.
All right, Jamie. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks again so much for joining us. It was interesting talking about a relatively more, I'd say, serious aspect of history, or at least a serious element to it, versus like crucified stuffed animals on a bridge.
Right. The cemetery of misfit toys.
Yeah, it's a callback to
misfit toys.
Check out that episode.
Yeah.
But thanks again so much for joining, Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks, Wyatt.
And thank you for joining us on this venture into Northlandia. To read the article for this week's column, as well as see archival photos, visit duluthnewstribune.com/topics/Northlandia. You can find all the episodes of Northlandia on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you or someone you know has a unique story that you believe could have a place here in Northlandia, let us know by emailing northlandia@duluthnews.com. Join us again next week and discover the extraordinary stories you just might miss if you're not in the right place at the right time, ready to step off the beaten path with no rush to return, here in Northlandia.